Property can be a great way to grow your long-term wealth and to generate a passive income. I am a big believer that property is a great asset class to invest in South Africa, and it's true when people say that most millionaires or multimillionaires owns property. I continue to invest in property because I believe that it is a cornerstone of wealth creation. Although this is a great way to increase your net worth, it isn't as easy as it sounds. In this video, I'm going to cover the ugly truths about property that not a lot of people talk about. You always hear the good side of property and never the bad side. I've made quite a few mistakes in my property investment journey, and hopefully this video can help you avoid those mistakes, especially if you are still a beginner. With that said, the first thing that I really want to cover is that you can't buy property without any money. This is something that is falsely advertised all over the internet, where people say that you can buy property with no money. And although this can be true in some cases, like using an angel investor or using a private investor, even though you don't earn an income at all, it's definitely possible to buy property in this way. But for most people, especially beginners, they won't have the knowledge to acquire finance from a private investor. So I'm going to talk about the traditional way of getting a loan from the bank. If you want to buy property, you need to get a loan from the bank. No one just has millions of rands laying around to buy a property cash. So if you want to buy a property using the bank's money, you need one of two things. One, which is an excellent credit score. Credit scores is very underrated, and this is something that I wish they can talk about in school and in our educational systems, because getting an excellent credit score is vital. This just means that you can get favorable terms from the banks when acquiring a loan. Make sure that you work on your credit score, because if you have a bad credit score, you can't expect getting a good loan. With that out of the way, the second thing that you need is a stable income. Yes, I said it, you need a job. You need money of some sort to prove to the bank that you have a good track record and that you will be able to service your debt from the bank. There's no other way around this. You need a good credit score and you need a stable income. Even though it can be a low income, you just need some sort of track record. So this is very important, because a lot of people talk about buying property with R0, and that's definitely not possible, because you need some sort of income, especially if you buy property the traditional way. Just remember, this is aside from creative financing methods. I'm talking to beginners and people that's just starting out. The second thing I want to touch on is that not all property is a good investment. And sure, there's a lot of different ways that you can invest in property. There's different strategies, there's different markets. But let's say, for example, you want to buy a normal residential property to rent out to a tenant, and you get the rental income to pay for all of your expenses. This is something that you need to be careful of, because not all deals are good deals. Just because you own a property doesn't mean that you will generate a lot of wealth. My Twitter feed is blowing up at the moment with all these different people talking about the differences between assets and liabilities, and whether your primary residence is actually an asset or a good investment or not. People have different opinions, and what I feel is that you need to live somewhere. So if you are able to buy a property that will be the same as what you would pay for rent at a different place, that might be a good option for you. You need to live somewhere, and I feel that capital pay down, meaning the money that you pay the bank each and every month, will reduce your capital. So capital pay down as well as appreciation over time. Appreciation meaning the value of your property over a long period of time will go up. That definitely beats paying a landlord each and every month. This is just something that I feel makes sense, but obviously if you live in a massive expensive property, and if that property is costing you 20,000 Rand a month and you don't get any income from that property, obviously that is technically a liability. So simply put, an asset is something that can put money into your pocket, where a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. And most people argue that a property itself is an asset, but the loan against your property is the liability. And that is very true. But with that out of the way, I don't really care if you think a primary residence is an asset or a liability. I just want to show you that not all deals are good investments, meaning not all investment properties are good investments. And let me quickly show you. This is just a property that I saw on Property 24, which is under offer, meaning someone actually bought this. It might not necessarily be an investment property for that person. Maybe they actually want to live there. But let me just quickly show you. I hope that you can follow along. The price was 789,000 and the rates and taxes is 987 Rand and the levies is 1,029 Rand. And I want to show you this Excel sheet that I use, and I give this Excel sheet to the people that's part of my membership. So let's just put in the value of the property over here, and we can see, let's say for example, we are only able to buy the property at full price, meaning that we won't have any equity in the deal. Let's say for argument's sake that we're able to rent out this property for 6,500 Rand, which in my opinion is the maximum amount that you will get for this property in this area. Just trust me on this. The bond amount over 30 years would be 7,964 Rand. We input our levies, we input our rates and taxes. Let's for this example leave out commission completely, we leave out vacancy completely, and we can see that the total cost of this property every month is going to be around 10,000 Rand, and we are only able to generate an income of 6,500 Rand. If we scroll down, we can see that the shortfall on this property, meaning the amount of money that we will pay into this property from our own pockets, would be 3,500 Rand or 41,760 Rand in a year. And this is exactly what I want to show you. Agents will advertise this property as a great investment, and although over the long term this value of this property might increase, and with capital pay down you might break even eventually, but at the moment, looking at the numbers, this is simply not a good investment, and the numbers never lie. And this is something that I just wanted to touch on quickly, because again, not all property investments is a good deal. Yes, you can invest in a good area with good appreciation, and over a long period of time you can generate a lot of money, but you'll have to sell that property to get access to that equity. Another thing is, yes, you can increase your rent over time, but most of the time your rates and taxes as well as your levies, and even like insurance with freehold properties, will increase more than you can increase your rental income, depending on the economic cycle. So with that out of the way, just remember that it's important to always run the numbers on each and every property deal, because again, not all deals are good investments. With that said, I want to add some ugly truths about things that not a lot of people talk about, and that's basically the risks involved in property. There's numerous risks involved with property, and it depends on your investment strategy, and I just want to touch on a couple of ones that's really important. One, which is interest rates. Interest rates really depends the amount you need to pay for your bond, which can at the end of the day increase your bond repayments and increase your shortfall or reduce your cash flow. This just means as interest rates go up, you will have to pay more out of your own pocket. And this is part of the economic cycle. This is just how everything works. If the Reserve Bank needs to tackle inflation, they can raise interest rates, and this means it affects each and every person that owns debt. Another one is rising cost, which I touched on previously. That's your rates and taxes, your levies, your insurance, and basically maintenance costs overall. These are all costs that can increase year over year, and that means that it affects your cash flow at the end of each and every month. So this is something that not a lot of people account for, because it's something that hasn't been happening at that certain period of time, but it's something that can happen in the future. So rising cost and interest rates is a massive thing that you need to understand before investing in property. And yes, If you own property or multiple properties for 30 years, this is something that will affect you. Another big thing to look out for is tenant defaults or bad tenants. We can include vacancies, but let me just explain this. If you invest in property, you have a revenue source and you have expenses and you have money left over at the end of the month. So your tenant will be your revenue source. So if you don't have a good or a reliable tenant, you don't have a good source of revenue, meaning that, let's say for example, 1 month your tenant doesn't pay, you still have to pay your expenses, and if you can't pay your expenses, you might end up defaulting on your loan, and in this case it won't be a pretty picture. It's super important to make sure that you always vet your tenants, because there's horror stories out there about tenants that's squatting, people that hasn't been paying, or people that destroy properties. The simple way to avoid this is to just be proactive. Make sure that you meet the person that will be renting from you. Do credit checks on platforms like TPN. Make sure that you see proof of bank statements, proof of employment, phone their employer, make sure that you see who this person is, and make sure that you speak to their previous landlord. These are all really basic stuff that you have to do before just putting someone in your property, because remember, this is your revenue stream. So you need to make sure you can secure your revenue stream. And with that said, it's always very important to have a good rental contract. You get really bad tenants, but you do get good tenants as well, and you will be able to see their track record that proves that they will be able to pay you every month for hopefully years to come. One last thing about stuff you need to look out for is definitely repairs and maintenance. So especially if you own a free title property or freestand property, or let's just call it a house, you will be liable for your repairs on the inside as well as the outside. And what I've seen over time is that people that own large houses say that it's cheaper just to buy a house instead of being part of a body corporate, because they can do the maintenance themselves. People just don't do repairs and maintenance on the exterior of their properties, meaning they will leave something that is broken or damaged for years and years to come, until it is a massive issue and it costs them a lot of money. When it comes to sectional title properties like complexes and townhouses, you get a body corporate, and which is controlled and run with trustees, where they basically pay and repair and maintain the exterior or the common property of your specific unit, and that forms part of your levies. But one thing that you need to remember is that doing repairs through a body corporate can be a very tedious process, and it's definitely not easy, and most of the time the body corporates or the complex doesn't have reserves to execute that specific repair. So repairs and maintenance can be a big issue, and maybe you can own a property for 5 years and you don't have any repairs or maintenance on that property for the whole entire 5 years, and year 6 comes, a geyser bursts, or your roof is leaking, or whatever it might be. So always account for repairs and maintenance, and that's like the golden rule. You always need a reserve fund for property. You have to make sure that you have reserves for each and every property, and my mentor always told me that it's a good idea to have 10% of the value of the property in cash for each and every property. These are just some of the things that you need to look out for, especially if you are a beginner. And I would advise you to Google, read, and speak to each and every person you can that knows or owns property. It's important to gain the right knowledge when it comes to property investment, because it is a long-term investment. And that's something that I wanted to touch on, and it's property is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Yes, you can generate passive income. Yes, you can build generational wealth. Yes, you can increase your net worth tremendously using leverage, but it's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme. You won't be able to make millions or or tens of millions of rands just overnight by investing in property. And I think that this is a realization that people get when they start investing in property. So just remember, you shouldn't invest in property if you want to get rich immediately. You invest in property if you want to get rich slowly, consistently, and over a long period of time. So with that said, I love property and I will continue to invest in property. And again, it is definitely a cornerstone of wealth building. At the end of the day, property can be a great asset class to invest in, but you have to make sure that you understand the basics, that you are aware of the things to look out for. And I hope that in this video you can see some of the truths about property, and I try to be as unbiased as possible to share with you guys that it's not just sunshine and roses. There's definitely some challenges and issues involved in this, and every asset class definitely has its own risk, but you need to be able to make calculated risks when investing in property. With that said, guys, I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. If there's something that you want to add onto this video, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. Hopefully that can help someone else. Maybe I can even learn something from you, and I would like to encourage you to share your story with me down in the comments. With that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.